Hey, everybody, welcome back to Tip of the Spear. And as always, we're looking at the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. And this is going to be part two with my interview with Andrew Jones. And we reconnected. And of course, we're going to pipe him in from Turkey, where he's on site and next to where the Ark of Noah was discovered. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into this session. We're going to look at some more technology, science, the discovery, the structure, the logistics of the art, all kinds of things. It's geographical formation in the area of Turkey and why that's important. And so it's going to be a great show. This is part two. So I hope that you go back and watch part one because that was amazing. And so it's going to be a really good time. So welcome to the show, Andrew Jones, researcher of Noah's Ark and right there on site. Good to have you, Andrew.
Thank you, Pastor. Great to be back.
All right. Hey, thank you. I know we're connecting. You're in Turkey. I'm in California. But I know you're taking some time. It's in the evening there. And what we wanted to do on this part two is dig in a little bit more. We did a kind of a cursory review and gave people an overview of things. But you're on site there, and obviously being on site and the discovery. Can you take us through some of the history of just a little bit of when the site was discovered and why this is significant in the area of Turkey that it is?
Sure. So it was actually discovered about 66 years ago, in 1959.
Okay.
What happened was a Turkish army captain who was working in the cartographer division, or he was a cartographer working in the mapping division there in Ankara, the capital of Turkey. And he discovered this boat shape as they were, that year, Turkey had joined NATO. And so they were mapping out these areas right near the Soviet Union at the time. So you look at Armenia and also the borders with Iran. And so they he found this ship shape, which I'll show you right there, and I can zoom in on it.
Perfect.
Right behind me. Yeah, and so this caught his attention because it was perfect shape of a ship. He talked to his supervisors, and they decided to release it to the public about this discovery in this remote area. And so it hit the news on September 11, or that's when he discovered it. But a week later, it was in the news in Turkey. But no pictures, just a little blurb. Within a month, on October, I want to say it was 22nd or 21st of 1959, they published a story about it in Hayat magazine, which is the Turkish version of Life magazine. And then it went around the world. They released the photograph, and then here's up behind me the Columbus Evening Dispatch, which shows the same photo in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. So even Americans saw it. And so this caught the attention of an evangelical Christian ark hunting group. And they decided to put a team together and try to go see the site in person on the ground.
Okay.
And so in June of 1960, which was reported in Life magazine and also again in Hayat magazine, this expedition. But in June 1960, American-Turkish expedition with Captain Durupinar. That's why the site's called the Durupinar Boat Formation.
Okay.
So he was the discoverer. But this expedition went out there, a joint expedition, and they looked at the site on the ground. And so what they noticed was you had this perfect ship shape sitting on the side of a mountain about 6,500 feet above sea level. And all around it was rough terrain, but yet in the middle was this smooth ship shape. And it happens to be the exact length of Noah's Ark. But as they walked on it, they didn't see anything that would resemble petrified wood, which in their mind they thought they would have to find just laying on the surface. Which, looking back on it, we're probably thinking, why would they expect that for a wooden boat this old? Right. But at any rate, they were, it didn't. They came back kind of negative. One of the guys, though, who was Dr. Arthur Brandenberger, he was a photogrammetry expert from Ohio State University, and he was part of the joint team that went out there. He thought that they were a little too negative, and he said he never saw something like this in his life.
Wow.
Would be natural. So he thought, this has to be man-made, and that more research should have been done. Now, so Dr. Arthur Brandenberger, he was involved, for example, with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Since being an expert in photogrammetry, he was able to identify the Soviet missile bases and batteries in Cuba. So
Wow.
he was world renowned in his field. At any rate, that was 1960. In 61, the Turkish military decided to get a little closer view with a low-flying airplane, and they hired Ara Güler, who was, these guys have all passed away now, but he was very famous for his photography, and especially of the different cities in Turkey, like Istanbul Life, and also archaeological sites like Nimrut Dağ, Mount Nimrut. And so they hired him to go out there and take photographs of Noah's Ark from a low-flying airplane. And we, before he passed away, I actually met him with my photographer and local Turkish translator, and we met him in Istanbul a couple years before he died. But his museum has released some of his photographs, and there's a lot they have. And I've been there in the archives looking at them on their computer screens. They wouldn't release them because they don't want them out on the internet. But these have been released on the internet already. But what they show is very clear. This ship object. This was 1961, so this is
Wow.
2 years after the initial discovery, and it just shows on the side of the mountain this really distinct ship object, well preserved. I don't know if it's coming through.
Yeah,
but,
it is. It's really neat. Good pictures.
Yeah, so that's that got everyone excited. That number one, you have a ship shape, and it's in the right location of Mount Ararat, the mountains of Ararat, as Genesis 8:4 says.
Yeah.
And it happens to be, and this is the big thing, it happens to be 300 Egyptian cubits long, and which is 515 feet, or about 157 meters. And so this exactly matched what's in the Bible. The Bible wasn't written with meters or feet and inches in mind,
Right.
but when Moses wrote it in the late Bronze Age, when he wrote the book of Genesis, the Egyptian royal cubit was the standard of measurement, as
Sure.
Encyclopedia Britannica said. So it's like today, like outside the U.S., how the metric system is the standard.
Sure.
In those times, the Royal Egyptian cubit was the standard across that area of the ancient world. And so it would be, he was educated. Moses was educated. He was the prince of Egypt. He knew what the standard of measurement was, so he used that longer cubit. It's about 20.62 inches. So you times that by 300, divide it by 12, and that gives you 515 feet. Now, we've measured it ourselves. Others in the past have. It's still 515 feet long, so which is really amazing considering that the area around this boat shape is always changing. It's on the side of a mountain, very unstable terrain. You have winter storms and spring storms, but the ship shape is still there in the same exact dimensions that they found it over 60 years ago.
Wow.
So it shows that there's stability to it, and it's not just a bunch of random, dirt and rock. So what's given it stability? We believe it's underneath there is the buried remains of Noah's Ark.
Sure.
That's kind of catches us up. So the main guy who did the research back in the 80s, who got involved, was Ron Wyatt, an American explorer. He was an amateur archaeologist, but he was really pushing for this to be Noah's Ark based on his findings. And that because of that work, the Turkish government declared the area to be a protected geological area for the ship shape, associated on you can say a cultural level to be with Noah's Ark. They're very technical in how they put it, so that they weren't declaring it to be Noah's Ark, but the shape of Noah's Ark, or the silhouette, as they call it here now. But it protected it from farmers, taking a plow and destroying the site or planting on it. And so they built the visitor center in 1987.
Okay.
And so we had the opportunity a couple of years ago in 2022 to renovate that building and partner with the locals. And so now that is what we're doing out here. We have this organization where we're not only researching Noah's Ark, but we're also presenting the findings and comparing it to the biblical account in this visitor center building that the government owns. And so
Hmm.
then now we have tour groups coming through, not just my own, but many tour groups come through because Mount Ararat and they come out in this area, which is way east on the east side of Turkey, right by Iran. They
Yeah.
come out here for other tourist reasons or traveling through, and we get the opportunity to share to them about this biblical story and what it means to us today.
Wow. That's amazing. So it's got the same length. What about anything else as far as biblical descriptions? Um, with the radar that they've looked at, do they see decks? Do they see levels? What else? We got the length of it matching, which is incredible. Which tells me, man, if it's the same length, then this can't be just a random sorry, I can't even get the word out. Geological formation, because it's too precise. It seems like, and especially in that boat shape. But what else have they found that authenticates that as far as the radar? Have they found decking? What have they found?
Yeah, so the site has not been excavated. So
Okay.
only non-destructive techniques have been applied to it. So we're talking about soil tests. We're talking about geophysical surveys, which you mentioned radar. So yes, radar was one of the tools. In fact, ground penetrating radar, or GPR, was first used in Turkey on Noah's Ark. So it was
Really?
kind of a
Wow.
pioneering site for the use of this new technology back then in the 80s. Now,
Cool.
in 2019, we had the opportunity to bring in an American team, and we hired them to do a job where they not only radared the site, they used thermal cameras on it, and they used LiDAR, which is laser, to get a very exact 3D model of the terrain there. So for preservation purposes and also research. But what the radar show is quite interesting. And I'm going to pull up a slide here.
Okay.
I'm hand picking these slides from a past presentation, but here's what happened. In 2019, we brought the team out. About 3 or 4 months later, they had the results analyzed in America, and an American archaeologist who trains archaeologists on how to use GPR, or
Uh-huh.
this radar equipment. He found these right angles about 7 meters down, about 21 feet.
Wow.
And so what we're seeing is, and he said, usually in nature, you don't see a series of right angles. And he suggested this would be a great spot to excavate if it was ever allowed.
Yeah.
But this was on the western lower, which is the northwest end, inside the boat formation.
Okay.
And so that, again, this is nothing. We're not forcing these results. We hired, basically, it was a random team.
Mm.
What happened at the end of September 2019? The liaison we had worked with, this archaeologist in Turkey, we had asked her to go get us permission to scan the ark, and I had to leave by like the October, I think it was 19th or so. A friend of mine was flying me to Saudi Arabia. We were going to do some filming at the proposed Mount Sinai site there,
Wow.
and so I had a deadline, and so that was like 3 weeks away, and so in those 3 weeks. Right after this lady said, "Okay, you guys can go ahead," I got an email one weekend from a random person saying, "Hey, I saw you on YouTube, and you guys are saying that you have this Noah's Ark project." He said, "I'd like to help. So, what do you
Hmm.
guys need help with?" And that was like 3 weeks before this exhibition happened, and I told the guys, "Well, we need to get a radar team out here. Do you know somebody who can do that and like get everything signed and contracts and flights, and all that?" And so he
Yeah.
said, "Hey, my friend is a VP in this company based out of Oregon, with branches in Atlanta, Georgia, and they do radar."
Huh.
And so he said,
Wow.
"Call him." So I called the guy, and by Monday we had agreed on terms. They had identified who on their team would come out, and so then I had to fundraise. But within a week and a half, we had raised the $25,000, and the
Great.
team of like 6 people, I think it was total, with our own photographer, came out. What was really amazing, though, before they got here, back up like the summer of that year, 2019,
Okay.
um, we got contacted by the Science Channel. They're owned by Discovery, and
Yeah.
they said, "Hey, we want to make this 1 hour show about this site. This
Mm.
only about the site." I was like, "Wow, okay." And they said, "But we want action shots. We don't want to just interview people. We want to see you guys doing the research." I said, "Well, we don't know what's going to happen. This fall we're trying, but we don't have an idea." But they had to get their permits months in advance and pick a date because of the schedule. So they
Sure.
picked this certain week in October, And that just happened. Fast forward to when I'm talking to this guy on the phone and getting contracts signed. Everything worked out for the team to come out the same week that the Science Channel was here to film.
Oh
So now
man.
they got their action shots, and then the other thing was God gave us the perfect weather, because with
Oh
radar you can't do it in the rain.
yeah.
And because you basically lose penetration depth if the soil is really wet.
Okay.
And so a weekend or two before, it was raining. We didn't know what the weather's going to be like. When the team got here Sunday night, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days working on site, crystal clear skies, no
Wow.
rain. I mean, I could, from the site, you could even see past Mount Ararat to the north into the mountains of Armenia. It was
Wow.
so clear. And then Friday was their off day, where they get one more day to kind of see the sites in the area and then go back to the United States on Saturday. Well, that Friday morning, it was raining. So
Hmm.
when they were working on the site, God gave them perfect weather, and then the rain hit after they were finished. So we had everything. It was, God was obviously amazing. What He
Yeah.
wanted to get done, it got done, and so it taught us a lesson. But everything, all the pieces worked out to have the Science Channel, the perfect weather, the great a team that has nothing to do with Noah's Ark. They're not, our friends. They're not
Right.
trying to
Right.
promote Noah's Ark, but they collected the data. In fact, some of them were atheists. They said, but they said they were here to do a job. Um, and
Huh.
so that data was given to the archaeologist, who I think was a Jewish guy in America, and he analyzed it and found these right angles behind me. So that was, and here's the layout of it on
Okay.
that northwest end, the
Wow.
bottom end of the boat. So that got us really excited. So now fast forward 4 years later, 2023. Right before that, a couple years before that, I had reconnected with a Turkish geologist who believed this was Noah's Ark, and he's been researching the site since the 80s. So he's like 85 years old now. He's retired, but he was a professor of geology, and he also believed it was Noah's Ark, not a natural formation. And I met him way back in 2000 on my early trips out here, and then I just didn't talk to him for a long time. So 22 or 21 years later, I reconnected with him. He's retired now, and I said, "Hey, we had all this data. We were not able to reconnect with the original archaeologist who had found the right angles behind me there." And so I said, "We need to find someone else who's a geophysicist who can study the results. We'll give them the raw data. If they can tell us what they find, let us know."
Yeah.
Say, "Hey, I know this lady in America. She has 40 years experience, and why don't you send her the data?" And so I talked to her, and she was willing to look it over for free.
Wow.
And so that fast forwards us to 2023, the results that she found.
Okay.
So she took the same data, analyzed it over just to validate what the other guy was finding. But what she was able to find some extra features that actually went viral and hit the news this year. But in
Wow.
2023, I did a Zoom call with her, and the biggest thing she said was, "It looks like you." She was asking if we had dug a tunnel through this site. And
Huh.
this is radar, so. And I told her, no, this is on the side of a mountain. She thought it was a utility tunnel or something. And I said, no, this is a boat formation on the side of a mountain. There's no electric lines around. The village is up on another side of the mountain. So she said, well, you have about a 2 meter high tunnel, about 6 feet in some
Hmm.
places, that you can walk through. And it goes down the center of the boat. And she said, here are the arrows pointing out that those red hot spots, which are
Yeah.
um, they're basically voids, air pockets,
Sure.
and they're about 6 meters down, 4 to 6 meters down, and 2 meters high. And she said there's a broken up one on the outside or the inside edge of that western side. We kind of highlight it there, zoomed in right there behind me. And it was following the outline of the ship. And then the really well preserved tunnel going down the middle. And so that, for us, this was amazing because, no one had, this is new technology, better, the first radar units were used in the 80s by Ron Wyatt and these other
Yeah.
researchers, even Dr. Salih Bayrak Tutan, the Turkish geologist we're working with now. He, was using this early radar that printed out the results on thermal paper. Here we have a digital model. Soon we'll release this 3D model that you can zoom in and out and see
Oh
these
wow.
tunnels and possible rooms. I don't know if I have it on here. Well, so the tunnel leads to a central cavity, this red hot spot here that, and it has two right angles on it. but it goes about 20 feet down.
Wow.
So it starts. It goes down to 40 meters, 13 meters, and then we lose the data. So it might even be deeper. So it's just like this big hole, cavity in the middle of the ark
Huh.
shape. And so in our mind, it's possible that this is a central atrium that went
Sure.
through all different levels,
Sure.
and let light and air circulate between the three decks. The Bible talks about decks, and so we're finding that the central tunnel that you see right behind me there in the red, that leads to the top of this big hole that's underground.
Okay. Yeah.
That goes down to 40 feet below the surface. So that was very exciting to find that. And so we had a friend in Germany who's able to take our results so far and overlay the data.
Mhm.
And he's still working on it because this recent news, I've shared it on my YouTube channel, but I'll let you guys know that we have, I don't know when this will air, your podcast.
Probably next week. Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be just right when we have an American news team, one of the big three networks, coming out next week. So,
Oh, wow.
and we're trying to get, they want something exclusive for them. So this friend in Germany is putting together this 3D model showing the GPR results overlaid on the actual terrain of the boat site,
Mhm.
and that's going to give us a way to show people who don't understand archaeology or GPR to see what's below the surface in a visual way. So we're making a short little, video clip. And so, this is a reconstruction of what's going on below the ground that will give us, a better idea for future explorations because we want to core drill the site.
Okay.
That will give us a way to actually get data from deep in the soil without destroying this fragile boat shape. So very exciting things happening right away within a week. And so we hope that this will get more people interested, spread the word about Noah's Ark to a more secular audience, and then those who are already believers, they can get excited about their faith being confirmed. It's very exciting times we live in.
You bet it. You bet it is. I'm so excited. I want to go right now and check it out myself and go over there and visit with you guys, man. That is
Okay, I
incredible.
hope you can. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna try to get over there, but we'll talk off air after the show about maybe arranging a trip over there. But
Sure.
but Andrew, that's amazing. So you have a central corridor that would go through, and then you have a central atrium, and then look, I'm not an expert. I'm just a Bible guy. But right angles in geographical formations. That's not natural to have right angles. I at least
Yeah.
know that. And especially,
Yeah.
you have this boat shape, and then maybe what we're looking at possibly is the rooms that held the animals. Maybe is that what is your conjecture?
Well, let me show you. It's not on my slides. This is brand new information that we're putting together for next week. Yeah, now it's gonna. I don't want to delay what we're doing here, but I have a slide here I want to show. Here we go. Let's see if this one will show it. Let's see this. Let's go down. Yeah. So what I might have to do is, I think I'll have to just stop. I think I can bring this over to the other screen behind us. I first have to stop my keynote. So you talked about the rooms, and this is
Yeah.
what I wanted to show is this slide right here. Okay. Enlarge it there. And then I will zoom in a little, because a lot of white space there.
Okay.
Oops. Let me zoom in on the right screen. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. So this is the, you can barely see the black dotted lines, but so, with GPR, you can go down, with our results goes down to 13 meters, about 40 feet, and then you lose the data.
Okay.
So we're using so if you back up, so GPR uses electromagnetic signals for thousands of times a second. It's penetrating the ground, and based on it coming back, it goes faster or slower based on the properties of the soil or rocks or air pockets.
Sure.
So then the software can map that out and give you a 3D model. So to go really deep, they use a lower megahertz. And so we used a 100 on this one. And we also had a 250. So in 2019, we had two antennas that we scanned the whole boat for those 4 days, plus used LiDAR and thermal cameras. And this 100 megahertz, which goes really deep, it got down to 13 meters. And at that lower depth, right below those tunnels, especially right below what we're seeing, the tunnels about 4 meters down, right below that, starting around 5, 6, 7 meters, we start seeing this pattern of grid work. It's kind of the light blue lines.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's I've combined the file there, so I can't turn off a layer.
That's
But
okay.
each one of these, so we have like 61 of these slices of data from the surface of the arc all the way down to 40 feet. And so each one of these slices represents about 3 feet or 1 meter of data, and they're spaced 1 meter apart. And so the geophysicist, the lady who found this, she provided us with the slices. Now you faintly see at these deeper levels possible grid work of walls. And I'll say walls because it just matches forming, like it follows the contour of the boat for the areas where they're preserved.
Okay.
And I'll just zoom out a little bit on the actual diagram there. So the blue areas, you can say, is like regular soil.
Okay.
The red areas, which is not really important for this, but that's where the big central void is.
Sure.
Right there.
Okay.
So if I zoom all the way out, you'll see the whole boat formation. The bottom is the top, the pointed end.
Yeah.
So the bottom of this graphic is the south uphill end, and that's the best preserved section that's showing us at these lower levels possible walls to these rooms. Again, if it was a natural formation, you should not see any type of pattern.
Right.
Like you talked about right angles. You shouldn't see that. You shouldn't see a grid work of whatever these denser materials are. We need a core drill. I'm going to right now just step out and say they're walls. And we'll make that as the hypothesis, and we'll try to prove that. But right now it's just a theory. But if this was rock, then somehow they all laid out perfectly in a line and within the boat formation. And so this is something we're very excited about. Now we made a 3D model of this, and I saw a preview of it with the German friend of mine who's doing this right now. And right before the call, he sent me some preview images because next week the crew is here, the news crew. And so we're very excited to show this to the American audience. It's going to be on, I won't name the network yet, but it's one of the top 3. So
wow.
If you think of NBC, CBS, ABC is one of those. They're here. And obviously that will generate a lot of interest. So we're prepping a bunch of YouTube videos to get ready, and praying that people will, get interested in the story of Noah and the flood. So
totally. Wow, that's huge. That's going to open up so many other opportunities when a major network has this, on their platform. And I hope it does spark interest. I hope it does create people to realize this is not a fairy tale. This really happened. And talk to me a little bit more about the science about it. So you have these findings and you have the shape.
So we do have some more science to report, and this was in the news this year.
Yeah, go
this
for it.
Is the locations where we took 88 samples from 22 sites of soil. And so what happened last year, this was a month from last year, so September 2024, I had a tour group here, and one of the guys on the tour was this soil scientist, a Christian, the soil scientist from Australia.
Okay.
And so he asked ahead of time, hey, you want to use my skills? Let me know if you want to do something. I said, we don't have anything planned, but, come see the site and we'll talk. So what happened after he had showed up, I also had Dr. Salih Bayrak-Tutan, the Turkish geologist. So here we have two scientists, both interested in the site. And we were taking these group photos. I had my drone. I'm always, doing a drone flight, doing our tours. And I noticed that the grass that grows on this mountainside was a different color just inside the boat formation in September. And it was yellow versus outside was kind of greenish or no grass at all. And I said, hey guys, you see this? Like the whole site itself has yellow grass inside. Outside is a different color grass. Well, can we design a soil test to find out what's going on? Now, Ron White did do a soil test,
Did
a
he?
number of them, in 77,
Okay.
but it was just one sample from inside and then a control sample outside.
Okay.
And so when I talked to the soil scientists, we were, at first I wasn't even thinking of, well, let's try to match what Ron did, or let's see if we can, repeat what he did. All I asked him was, his name was Bill. I asked Bill, can you design something to help explain what's going on here? And he said, I don't know, maybe it's just the sheep or something. I said, well, the sheep are not allowed on the ark, but yeah, maybe outside the sheep are, pooping or whatever. They get more fertile inside. Then the other thing we thought about, well, maybe it's the tar. The Bible says the pitch that was covering inside and outside to make it waterproof.
Right.
So maybe as it decayed, it made the soil more waterproof. And so when the water comes off this mountainside, it doesn't come into the boat shape. And so the grass later on in the season, like in the fall, it has less water, so it turns yellow. We're just thinking, all these different things until we got the real data. So he designed a test out. He said we have to get more than 2 samples. So unlike what Ron did, he wanted to do a statistical analysis of all of like across the whole site in the mountain too. So inside and outside the boat. To do that, you need, in fact, we got the bare minimum according to his friend who has a PhD in soil science. But we had 88 samples taken, so 4 from each location to give an average.
Okay.
So 22 sites, 12 inside and 10 outside. And we did that in end of September last year. We gave the results to Dr. Salih, the Turkish geologist, and he submitted it to Ataturk University. And sorry, that's washed out, but
okay.
This was the printout. I was in Switzerland for a couple months this year, and every day I was like bugging him, saying, where are the results? We gave it to you a couple months ago. Show us the results. And finally, he sent me this really blurry, he had an old Android phone photograph of a fax, really bad. I was like, come on. And so finally he sent me the actual file, the PDF file, and I ran it through. I'm not a soil scientist. So I said, okay, I want to know what's going on. So I didn't, all I did was upload it to, I think it was Grok, which is Elon Musk AI, like ChatGPT competitor. Yeah. And I use ChatGPT, and I'm paying for not the free level, but the next one in, $20 a month for both of those. And so it gives you extra, features, whatever. So anyway, I asked it, okay, here are 2 groups. I didn't use the word ark or boat or didn't say anything. I said, what are the difference between these 2 soil sample groups? And it was able to pick out and say, okay, these are the areas that have that are different based on stats.
Okay.
So it's not just one, this is a side of a mountain. So if you get one soil, it could be a dark part of the soil and has a different mineral content versus 5 feet over. So because we were able to get 88 samples, we could run these stats, unlike what Ron did. But it was interesting. So the first thing it noticed, and then we also, before I mention the results though, Bill reviewed it. He has his master's in soil science. He found the exact same thing that the AI system
did. He really?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just math. Then he submitted it to his friend who is an atheist, but who has a PhD in soil science. And he identified, and we got his paper, and he identified the exact same elements that were significantly different at the 95% confidence level, especially for, which is really interesting, for organic matter. So here you have,
wow.
So you got to think about this. I'll bring up the picture of the boat site here, and you can kind of see those X's on it.
Yeah.
That those marks some of the spots, but you have this boat shape that critics will tell you as mud came down this mountainside, it just went around a rock or a basement rock or bedrock, and it formed a ship shape as the mud came down.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then the soil inside should be exactly the same as the soil outside.
Good
it's
point.
just soil from the mountainside.
Right.
And so what was interesting about this test was that it showed that the soil inside the boat is almost 3 times, I think it was 2.74 or 75% higher organic matter than the soil right outside. You see, we have some of those X's right outside the boat shape on that western side. And we also got samples over here on the eastern side. And so right away, that was one thing that it found was the organic matter content was almost 3 times higher. Then the
Wow.
next thing it found was that potassium, I think, was 138% higher inside. So when you take a combination of all this, it's suggestive, as Bill was saying, that something, a large organic, something that was made of wood, especially.
Yeah.
I don't know what else could it be, but
Right.
as it decayed, this boat-shaped wooden object decayed there and affected the soil right inside versus right outside.
Sure.
Uh, and so that was very significant because people always argue about, okay, what's the nature? This is, some say it's a solid rock, and that's been published in peer-reviewed journals, and this is a solid rock that came down, or right there it's a solid rock. And it's not. It's a soil dirt object that's been keeping its shape because the dirt's really hard versus
Mm.
outside. And now we know what's going on too with the actual chemical makeup. We have
Yeah.
laboratory results showing that has higher potassium, higher organic matter, and which is really interesting on the organic matter part is you can run a formula and get the carbon. There's a basic formula to get what the carbon percentage is in there, and it was matching Ron Wyatt's 1979 one
Wow.
soil sample he took inside matched our 88 samples we took, the stats for. So it was really interesting that even his one sample, he was getting, I think, almost 4% or a little over 4% carbon
Hmm.
inside versus 1 point something outside. Well, this is what we got too with all our samples using the formula on the organic matter part to get the carbon percent. So we were getting basically the same as he did on that. And then also the other thing it found that was different in the soil was the pH level, about
Huh.
8 to 9% lower on the pH scale. So, and and I had to look this up because again, I'm not a soil scientist, but I
Yeah.
looked up ChatGPT. I said, okay, how would wood as it decays, and then give me the science behind it too, like the articles that would show this. But and when wood decays, why would it affect pH levels and which way would it go? So
Sure.
so again, all of this adds up to this is a distinct earthen formation
Hmm.
that suggests that, just based on the chemistry alone, not the GPR or not even the shape you see, not even the length being 300 cubits long, like the Bible says, but
Sure.
just on the chemistry alone, saying this is a distinct object on the side of the mountain is unique.
Yes.
So, and this is brand new. And so we have more plans. So the lab didn't consume all the samples. So we have more data we want to extract from the remaining samples we have left. And we even gathered more samples about a month ago. So who knows what we'll find out that we can report back next year. So
It's
very exciting.
amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So, one more thing on the technology and the structure of it and stuff like that. I remember watching a video, this is a long time ago, of Ron Wyatt, and he had said that he theorized that on the side he had seen spines, or it seemed to be, these columns or whatever. Did you guys see any of that?
I just
Formations
have
of
a
the spines.
photo. Yeah, so you mean like the ribs of the ship?
Yeah, yeah. I think he called it, yeah, something like that. The ribs of the ship, and he went and filmed a location, and he was kind of just walking through it and showing. And these were vertical ribs, I
Yes.
guess. Did you guys see any of that? And what is your take on that?
Well, so when Ron did that, he did it in, I believe, 1990 with Richard Reeves. And Richard's still around. But on that trip, Ron got permission to shave off like a couple of inches of soil. So what they
Okay.
did, they sharpened the metal like shovels. They put them on really long poles. And then, in my other presentation, I have a slide showing these, so your audience would see what it. But anyways, they shaved off about 2 inches of the outside soil, which was all weathered. And
Okay.
what it revealed were these light and dark striations, these vertical columns, but they're not solid. They're basically the color changes in the soil. So you can see, like when you're walking on the ship, when you come out here, when you're walking on it, you'll see that it's dirt, and everything near the surface is weathered or decayed, but like all the information, the secrets of the boat is inside the soil,
Sure.
which is most expected for a over 4,000-year-old ship.
Right.
This would be the oldest wooden ship around, or oldest man-made object, if you believe the flood destroyed everything. So, when Ron shaved that off, within a year, though, that area that showed the light and dark striations
Uh-huh.
went back to normal. It was weathered. The winter, we get snow here, 1 or 2 feet of snow,
Okay.
a lot of big rainstorms. So I know the spot. We show them on a tour. We show people, this is where Ron, shaved the sides off. A couple of years ago, I took a drone photo in the morning light because that's where the sun hits on the eastern side. So
Okay.
where Ron did it is at the pointed end. So that's the
Okay.
southeast end right there where my finger's kind of pointing. That is where he shaved it off, where part of the boat, the outside dirt had fallen away, revealing just the sides of the ship. And right there, so a couple years ago, I flew a drone and took a photo there, and it basically showed you could kind of see these light and dark striations in the sunlight. I wish, I haven't asked for permission, but if we want to duplicate what Ron did, it would be nice to do that. But, on the other end, the other point I want to make, though, about that is that I wish Ron had taken soil samples to test it, because all he did was take photos. Maybe he didn't have permission, but it'd be nice to see chemically what's going on between like this 2 foot and over here, what's darker, like 2 feet away.
Right.
So then we can say, hey, yeah, there's something going on, like petrified wood, or just the decayed, the chemistry of the soil changed because as the rib timbers decayed.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It's not a solid, like petrified column there.
Sure.
It was just like powder, dirt.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So tell me this. The shape of it, as a seaworthy vessel. I mean, you got the length of it. Give us some insights in how seaworthy this thing would have been. Do we have any indications from all your testing and stuff that? Because I've heard other people talk about this when they've analyzed it, and they have said that this structure, however God made Noah create this thing, is almost virtually unsinkable. And the fact that it was a barge in essence, and this thing is going to survive the flood and the great fountains of the deep bursting and the rain and stuff like that. Can you speak to any of that you find that correlates to the seaworthiness of that?
Well, I'm not a shipbuilder, but what's interesting, God brings people in at the right time. And here's an example just on this question you're asking. In June of this year, we had a Miami church out here.
Okay.
So it was like 22 or 23 people and their pastors. And anyways, they're coming back next year too to do it over, plus add the 7 churches. But when we were at the Ark site, we were at the visitor center, and this guy, he was not part of our group, this older gentleman, came up to me and said, "You're Andrew Jones." And I was like, yeah, and who are you? I've told this story before, but he identified himself or introduced himself as a captain. He was in the U.S. Coast Guard for 30 years, I think he said, and he was captain of 2 ships. And he said, "What you have out there on the side of that mountain is the best ship design." And he said, "It's a shipwreck." And I said, "Well, how do you know about the design?" And he said, "Well, I used to captain 2 ships." He said, "In World War II, this is how we designed our Navy battleships, or I don't know which, I think the battleships." And then he said, starting in the 1990s onward, they started designing the Coast Guard ships this way, where he said you had a pointed bow, the front, and a rounded stern, the back. And I asked him, well, like, what does that serve? And so he actually met us at different sites along the tour. He had his friend with him. And so the next day we went out to the village with the drogue stones, these stones with holes that Ron thought were associated with Noah's Ark. And so we were showing the tour group these stones, and he showed up. And then I said, "Let's do an interview in front of one of these stones. I want you to talk about the ship design and drogue stones and all that." And he said, "Sure." And so I put up a video on my YouTube channel, but briefly, basically he was saying that the pointed end helps the ship cut through the waves. Now, there's no sail propulsion, so it's not like a sailboat. There's no motor on it. But you do have oncoming waves in a rough sea, and you don't want the ship to be parallel to those waves. As he said, you don't want it in the trough between each wave, because then some big tidal wave or a huge, a wave coming through could theoretically, turn the ship upside down and basically capsize it.
Right.
So you don't want to be parallel to these waves. You want the ship's front, the bow, to go into it. So a pointed end would help you cut through that. And then
Gotcha.
he said the rounded end is similar in the sense that when waves come from the back end, it helps disperse the energy away from the ship when it hits
Mm.
that back side when it's rounded like that. So he said this was a perfect design that, Moses. This was most people. Some people ask, well, how do you know the ark was like that? The ark was square or box or flat bottom, and then they try to read. They try to read a lot into the text when right now we have a ship shape that matches the Bible for dimensions and is in the right location, but it's the best design. A
Yeah.
barn shape is not the best design. Noah doesn't write off the ship shape and say, oh, it has to be a box. People assume that because they see the word ark. Oh, the Ark of the Covenant, and Moses will
Sure.
put into an ark. But I've been to Cairo many times on our tours, and the museums there, they do have reed baskets, like what Moses was put in
Oh,
as a baby.
really?
They're still there in the museums. They have samples from the 18th dynasty, the time of the Exodus,
Sure.
and these reed baskets some are square, others are rectangular, others are oval, some are circular.
Huh.
I have photographs of these. So the word is the same, but so that word is not describing the shape, but the functionality. So,
Gotcha.
Moses was in the ark. It held his life. He was being it was carried on the water, the Nile River. But it doesn't say whether that was a round basket or a square.
Yeah.
So Noah's Ark too. In fact, if you go to Kentucky, I don't know how close you are to Kentucky, but you're in California. Never mind.
Yeah.
But the Answers in Genesis people who do a great job of defending, the Book of Genesis as being a historical document and the flood and creationism. Now they don't think this is Noah's Ark. I wish they would investigate it more. But they have a really great, they have almost a full scale replica, just a little couple feet smaller than ours, shorter than the actual site. And theirs is a ship shape, has a hull and it has a pointed end. It is not a square barge or a rectangular box. But they have this display behind me as on the wall when you're going through their replica of Noah's Ark. And it talks about what was the shape of Noah's Ark.
Uh-huh.
And they mentioned that you can't use that word to show the shape. It's more about capacity or functionality.
Mm.
It's like when I say I have a 5,200 square foot house.
Yeah.
That gives you no idea if it's a 2-story, 1-story, if it's a L-shaped
Right.
or square or whatever,
Right.
or like round like the Apple headquarters. So you have this the same idea with Noah's Ark. And so we believe that the best design based on science and shipbuilding and things like that is a ship shape with a pointed end and a rounded stern, stern in the back end. And that's what we find here. So it perfectly matches what you would expect for the best design to survive out in the rough seas.
Sure. Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. Let me ask you this. I got a few more minutes, left, and gosh, I could just go on forever on this stuff, man. This is amazing. So tell me this. Let's take a step back, and we've been neck deep into technology, but I think there's a kind of corresponding thing that I'm noticing with a lot of archaeology coming to light these days versus, something happening in the 1500s. But it seems like with the discovery of archaeology, technology, science, that they're unearthing a lot of the things that the Bible already said was what happened, but they're now all coming to light. And I know this is a convergence of science and technology. There's a convergence of just where we're at in history. But from God's perspective, why do you think these things are coming to light now? Because I mean, man, if you and I lived in the Middle Ages, I mean, we would have had to take this on face value, and now all of a sudden, here's more evidence that's coming out, and I know evidence is not supposed to do anything to our faith, but do you see a timing in this and God doing this to mankind and kind of saying, hey, look, this did happen? I don't know. What is your take on this from a spiritual standpoint?
Yeah, for sure. You can't ignore that. This is not just dry science, and this is not just about data. You're looking at a story in the Bible that even Christ associated with the end times when
Yeah.
he talks about as in the days of Noah. You even see in is it Second Peter?
Hmm.
It's either First or Second Peter. I think it's Second Peter where he talks about that you'll have scoffers in the end times who will
Yeah.
say, where is the coming of the Lord? But then he goes into, like, I don't know if it's the first chapter or the second chapter, like verse 5 and 6, I believe, or 7, where he's talking about those who deny that the earth was created out of water, Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, but also that the world was destroyed by water.
Yeah.
And of course, then he brings in the fact that he connects that to the earth will soon be destroyed by, or in the end times will be destroyed by fire.
Yeah.
So, and he said the people are willingly ignorant. And so, another, I mean, you can say in plain English that they want to be stupid. Like they know the facts, they don't want to believe it. They're
Yeah.
willingly ignorant of the data. We have all this data here, but only those who are searching for truth, they'll see what it means. The Holy Spirit will work on their hearts.
Sure.
Obviously, the data alone is not going to save them. That's
Right.
not the point. But just Christ, I think he uses all tools and all methods that to reach people's souls. To reach them for the kingdom. And so you have a lot of people these days, especially non-Christians, obviously, who need hard facts. They need data because they don't know anything about Noah's Ark. We had a Taiwanese. We get a lot of different groups coming out there. We had a Japanese group. We had a couple of Taiwanese groups. Every year, these groups come through because there's a Turkish company that brings them out this way, and that's kind of
Okay.
like a new thing going on, where these companies are now stopping in at the Noah's Ark site. Like there's something now to see there. In the past, the visitor center was an empty building, but now we actually have displays, and they have a 5-minute film they can watch.
Nice.
And so we're educating people, but these people, they're doing these cultural tours. They're not religious tours.
Okay.
They're either atheist or whatever they are in these Hindu or Buddhist in these Asian countries, and they don't know anything about the story of Noah and the flood.
Hmm.
And so this is kind of a way to educate them, and this is
Yeah.
how God reaches people who are not brought up in the faith. So they're not like even backslidden. They have no idea about knowing the flood. Maybe only from a Hollywood movie. So I believe that God, just like what He did for Thomas, doubting Thomas as we call him,
Mm.
he wanted physical proof that Christ resurrected,
Yeah.
and Christ was willing to give it to him because he wanted, he said, "Blessed are those who, without seeing they can believe." But he didn't want to cause any doubts for Thomas. And I think there are people today who are obviously searching for truth, and they're praying, and God says, "I'll give it to you." And so, through science, through archaeology, through other means, He's reaching these people with this type of the facts. And so, I don't need Noah's Ark to be discovered to believe, in Genesis chapter 6, 7, and 8.
Right.
I really believe that happened. Hebrews 11 talks about by faith we believe the flood happened and creation happened. And these stories are true, but there are people who don't have that type of faith or didn't grow up as a Christian. Obviously, it's great to affirm our faith and know that you're built on a solid foundation. These are real events that happen, so you're going to find the remains of them, the evidences of this through different science like archaeology and chemistry. And so it's very exciting. But I do see that connection, especially in the end times when you have a lot of doubters
Yeah.
about these stories. And so God's providing the truth to those who are searching for it. Obviously, you're going to have it just like the Pharisees. You're going to have people who, no matter what you show, their hearts are hardened,
Yes.
sadly. And so, just like he told the Pharisees, like, if I were to raise even a dead person, you would not believe. And sure
Right.
enough, he does. He raises Lazarus, and what they try to do, they try to kill the guy. They were so hard-hearted that they didn't realize what they're doing. And so the same thing today. If a dead person, the biggest miracle around, could raise from the dead and say, God, there's a God.
Right.
There's still people who wouldn't believe. So Noah's Ark, I don't expect, like, if we'd 100% prove this site, I don't expect like the world to jump up and down. There's always going to be a majority against it. You're
Sure.
going to have that remnant minority who are searching for truth and following God's will. And but we do our part, and God does the rest. And we'll see how it plays out.
Well, I think the critical part you're playing, you personally and your whole organization, is an apologetic against lies out there. And you're right. People are going to the broad road of destruction. Many who find it, but it's almost like God is giving people. There's no excuse.
Yeah, that's
Whether you're looking at intelligent design or you're looking at archaeology or you're looking at shipbuilding, it's like, yeah, this matches how a ship would a perfect sized ship to weather the storm in high waves makes perfect sense, and it strengthens our faith as believers. But it seems that God is doing everything He can to get people saved, and there will be no excuse. We have the scientism now, and you have these people that say, well, I'm only going to believe the science. Well, here's the science right here. How do you refute that? What is that? You have to come to the decision. And you're right. It's not, even if it was 100%, here's Noah's Ark, or even God appeared in the sky and said, I'm God, now worship me. There's going to be a whole host of people that won't do it. But it seems like the creator is wanting, obviously, to do what He said. I don't want any to perish, but all to come to repentance. In reference to Noah's Ark, Peter was asking, why is this taking so long? Or someone was asking Peter, and he's saying, I don't want any to perish. And it shows you the heart of God, and God's using you over there. Now, here's my question as far as fun is concerned, because how does anyone take a trip with you guys? I know you guys are doing tours and stuff. So
yeah.
how would someone find out about that and go on site, man?
Yeah, so our main website for the Noah's Ark research is Noah's Ark Scans, with the S, noahsarkscans.com.
Okay.
You can also go to our YouTube channel, which is not that, but Discovered Media. And we have all our videos up there with links to Noah's Ark Scans. We're also on Facebook, Facebook page, Noah's Ark Scans. You Google it, you'll find us. But basically, from there, there's on the menu, there's a tour menu item, and you can click that and then see the dates. Obviously, it's coming up winter, so we have one more end of the next month.
Okay.
And then we're on break, and then we start up in May. So in May,
Okay.
we have our first of the season. So we already have the dates listed for most of next year. So
Okay.
through the summer, we don't have the fall yet figured out.
Okay.
But yeah, so they can join, check out the dates and sign up.
Great. Great. And you're doing it through summer, right? In those dates?
Yeah, it's because this is a mountainside, so we're even hopeful. We're pushing it with our last tour of the year coming up in a month, or hopefully there's no snow. It's really already autumn temperatures here. They get 4 seasons here.
Okay.
But our tour, it not only includes Noah's Ark for those who have the time and the funds. We can go south, so we have a 5-day option for those who want to just come out and just see Noah's Ark in the mountains of Ararat or Ur-2. We talked about, I think, last time about that name, Ararat, coming from this ancient kingdom here. So we go see the evidences for Ur-2. And then on the 12-day tour, we continue to southeast Turkey, and you get to see the Tigris and Euphrates River. So, 2 biblical rivers, even mentioned in Genesis.
Yeah.
And then we go to Haran, where Abraham came from.
Man,
his father died.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's all in Turkey. That's
it's
where
in Turkey. Huh? Wow.
Yep, southeast Turkey, right beside the Syrian border. So we take them there. You see the Bronze Age site of Tel Haran in those areas, and even we throw in prehistory. What happened probably right after the flood. This area of the history we don't really know yet. Everyone's still figure out where they were not using pottery, so it's called a pre-pottery Neolithic Stone Age.
Wow.
I don't agree with the dates, but it happened after the flood. One of the famous sites is Göbekli Tepe. You might see that in the news, and Karan Tepe. These are sites in southeast Turkey, along near the Euphrates and the plains of Haran, that the archaeologists are amazed that these huge megalithic sites are being built with different carvings, and so that's part of the tour. You get to see that. So we throw in not just regular history, but also the biblical connections and try to tie it into the Bible. But you get to see some special sites with Haran, and even some, there's a northern theory for Ur, and that's Urfa. and that's where there's a minority, but they believe that Abraham was born there. Then he just went south to Haran. His father died, and then he continued on to Canaan
Okay.
versus the Ur in Iraq.
Sure.
So, anyways, so we showed them those sites as part of the 12-day tour. So.
Wow, that'd be incredible. Well, there you go, guys. If people are interested and this has piqued their interest, man, this is the place to go and be with you guys. That's awesome. Andrew, we're going to continue to watch the developments that you guys are doing, and I'm anticipating some neat stuff coming out. Sounds like really, a great place to be as an archaeologist and a researcher where you guys are at, and very exciting times. And I think this is, like Messiah said, these are the days of Noah, and now here it corresponds with the finding of the ark in the last 60-something years or whatever, and the evidence that coming behind that. I think that's not a coincidence. I think it's all planned and purposed. And you're right in the middle of it. So thank you for the work you're doing, Andrew. And I'm going to continue to bring you on because you know what? I didn't get to the anchor stones. I wanted to talk to you about the anchor stones.
Yes, we had more questions. Yes.
And I want to get to we had talked about how it was the location to Babylon and how it was like a straight shot down into the Fertile Crescent. And I think next time what I'm going to do, the third time I bring you on, I want to go in those directions and just make this a three-parter type of thing because you had mentioned that a little bit last time about this location to Babylon, and then everything comes out of the Fertile Crescent, the Tower of Babel, all that stuff, and the
first civilizations, the first cities.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into that, but cut. We ran out of time. There's so much good information. So we'll do a part 3, my friend.
No problem. I'm happy to share.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate your time. I know it's late back there. I got to get you running, but can you, once I close the program, stay on a little bit? I want to talk to you off air and get some ideas from you about maybe a trip over there. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. Keep up the good work. And folks, thanks so much for tuning in. And again, go to noahsarkscans.com. You find their videos on YouTube, Discovered Media. And again, you guys can really tune in on what's happening, the latest discoveries. And as a believer, it strengthens our faith. And so remember what the Lord said. When you see all these things begin to happen, even like the days of Noah, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draws near. God bless you guys. We'll see you next time.